Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dennis and Julie. This is about the time when you're used to hearing, hello, everyone, and welcome to Dennis and Julie, Julie Hartman and Dennis Prager. You know, Jules, isn't it amazing the power of music to get us oriented into a mood? Or maybe you would hear him say, what number is this? He always had those fantastic introductions, but as you know, we are missing the other half of Dennis and Julie today. As many of you probably know by now, on Tuesday, Dennis suffered a terrible fall and he was immediately hospitalized. He entered surgery, and now we are praying for the best possible outcome. I know that so many of you just want information about Dennis's condition, and I promise you that we will be more forthcoming in the coming days with that information as we learn it. But we don't know very much right now. What I will say, though, is that tragically, this is not a he will be back next week situation. This is a long haul and a long recovery for Dennis. And that is why I humbly ask you for your prayers. So many of you, Dennis and Julie listeners, Fireside Chat listeners, Dennis Prager radio show listeners, people from all walks of life and all faiths have written the most gracious messages to Sue, Dennis's wife, to me, to Sean, to Alan Estrin, and to Dennis's extended family members with your support and your promises of prayer. And I just want you to know how much all of us deeply appreciate those messages. And although the situation is quite somber, they do seem to be working. Since Tuesday, every single day, we have seen modest improvements. Modest, but nevertheless improvements. And you know, it's kind of funny because this subject of prayer is a very Dennis and Julie-like topic. In fact, I think that we recently did an episode discussing the power of prayer. And that was something that always kind of plagued me. I never understood how prayers work, how they accord with our free will, the extent to which God gives credence to prayers. And this is something, as I had just indicated, that Dennis and I talk about. But I remember this summer I was in Rome on a spiritual immersion boot camp, and I was speaking with a Catholic priest who gave me what I thought was a really satisfying answer about prayer that I want to share with you. He said, God does not want slaves. God wants to interact with our free will. He wants us to be active participants in creation. And he said to me, you know, if an outcome is right here, perhaps with the power of prayer, again, with God interacting with our free will, we may be able to move the outcome maybe over to something like right here. And I thought that that was a really satisfying answer, that God does want to interact with our free will. And of course, if there is anyone who is deserving of our prayers, if there is anyone who has racked a lot of points up in the God category, it is our dear friend, Dennis Prager. And I also want to say that as hard as this has been to those of us who are really close with Dennis and know him personally, I also recognize that this is very difficult for so many of you who have listened to Dennis for years and just want to know if he is okay. And people come up to me all the time, or they email me and they say, my gosh, Julie, you're so lucky to work with such a legend, such a giant of a man, literally and figuratively. And they often say to me, I feel like I know him, and I know I don't know him because I've never met him. And I said, no. I always say this to people. I say, no. You do know him. He is exactly the same person on the air as he is off the air. And so to all of you who have been following Dennis for some time, you know that man who sits right across from me. And you know that he would want all of us to continue to live our lives with joy, to not despair, as he often says on Dennis and Julie, to despair is a sin. And I know that Dennis would be so moved by your messages of support and prayer. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts for those lovely messages of support.